Good morning, students. I welcome you all for the class. Today, we'll be going to discuss regarding what are the operations that are going to be done on a process, and the second topic is IPC, which is nothing but inter-process communication. Fine, today we'll be going to look after these two topics. So what are the operations that can be done on a process, and the second one is inter-process communication. So there are basically two operations that are going to be done on a process. So as we all know, a process is nothing but a program in execution, right? So on a process, what are the operations that we can do? So what are those major basic operations are? Process creation and process termination. These are the two major operations that can be done on a process. Fine. So a process in the system can execute concurrently, and they must be created and terminated. Why? Because as we are talking regarding multi-programming, many programs are going to execute concurrently. So irrespective of number of processes, we have to execute all the processes concurrently, so that we have to create that process, and once we have created that process, we have to terminate that process. So basically these are the main important two operations that we can be done on a process. Here are some of the operations that can be done on a process. Here the first one is process creation. This is the process creation, that is initially a process needs to be created, and the second one is process preemption in the sense when we are going to do the CPU scheduling, we'll be going to have two things like preemption and non-preemption. So what do you mean by preemption in the sense suppose here we are going to have the CPU. Here CPU is going to execute some process P1. CPU is executing some process P1. So when this process P1 is executed by the CPU, so here now this process P1 is having the low priority, and process P2 is having the high priority. Fine. So now presently this process P1 is going to be executed by the CPU. So when it is under execution, I want the processor to be P2 to be executed now. Why? Because it is having the high priority. So what I'll do is I'll be going to make the process P1, that is I'll be going to make the low priority process to be halted and high priority process to be executed. So what I'll be going to do is I'll be going to stop this process P1. So this process P1 I'll be going to keep in the waiting state, and I will allocate this process P2 to the CPU. Why? Because it is having the high priority. So preemption in the sense this one, stopping the processes forcibly. Stopping process forcibly, that we call it as a preemption. So this we call it as a preemption. So when we are talking regarding non-preemption in the sense, here we can't stop the process in the middle. Once a process entered into the CPU, it has to complete all its tasks, and then only it has to leave the CPU. So we can't stop in the middle due to any of the reasons. So that is the preemption and non-preemption. Process preemption in the sense how the process is going to be preempted. Process preemption is also one of the operation on a process. Process blocking is also one of the operation on a process. And finally, the major important one is the process termination. Once a process has been created, it has to be terminated. So these process creation and process termination are the major two operations that can be done on a process, and remaining are this process preemption and process blocking. So preemption in the sense we have to we can't we can stop the process in the middle, that we call it as a process preemption. And process blocking in the sense blocking state, or we can also call it as a waiting state. As we have seen in the process state diagram, Waiting state in the sense whenever a process requires in need of an IO operation, it will be moved to the waiting state. Whenever that IO operation completed, again it will be admitted in the ready state, and then a process is going to be executed. So these are the major operations that can be done on a process. So process creation, process preemption, blocking and termination. So when we are going to talk regarding this process creation, so let me explain you in detail. So when we are going to talk regarding this process creation, so process creation is nothing but so we are talking regarding process creation. So when we are going to say that a process creation, so how a process is going to be created in the sense, here a process P is there. So P1 is there. So P1 is going to create another two processes. So process P2 and this one is process P3. Here P2 can have two processes like process P4 and we'll be going to have process P5, and again process P3 is going to have, let us, three processes. So P6, P7 and P8. So this forms a tree-like structure. So this is how a process is going to be created. So here this process P1 is the main process. This process we call it as a parent process. And these P2 and P3 we call it as a child processes of, these are the child processes of P1. Here P4 and P5 are the child processes of P2, and P6, P7, P8 are the child processes of P3. Like this, a process can create any number of processes. So this is a process creation, fine. So this P1 we call it as a parent process. Parent process created two processes P2 and P3. These P2 and P3 are the child processes of parent P1, and P2 again in turn created two processes P4 and P5. P4 and P5 we call it as the child processes of P2, and P6, P7, P8 are the child processes of P3. This is how we are going to create a tree-like structure. So when we are going to talk regarding this process creation, like we have to talk regarding when a process is created, there are things to be discussed is resource sharing. Resource sharing. And the second thing is execution between the processes. So execution between the processes. Between the processes in the sense a parent process and a child process. How we are going to execute the parent process and a child process. And the next thing is like what is the address space. So address space sharing, like how the address space is sharing between the processes. So all these things we have to discuss. Suppose when we are talking regarding the resource sharing, so when we are talking regarding the resource sharing between the processes, like why? Because resource sharing between the parent process and the child process. So this resource sharing can be, the parent can share all resources to the child, and a second option is parent can share some of the resources to the child, and the third one is parent is not sharing any of the resources to the child. So these three things, any of the thing can happen. It is not mandatory that parents should share all the processes to the child. So based on the conditions, like based on the situations or based on the circumstances, the parent process will share all the resources to the child process. So all the resources. So here what are the resources? Resources may be CPU, resources may be memory, resources may be IO devices, so or resources may be some file. So all these comes under the resources. So parent actually depending on the need of his task, he will be going to share all the resources to the child, or he can share, a process can share some resources to the child, or a process need not share any resources to the child. So this comes the sharing of resources. So how we are going to, the second one is how we are going to execute between the processes, like how the execution takes place between the processes. So here the execution between the process and a child can be in concurrently. We can do it concurrently, fine, or else this is the first thing, the concurrently in the sense like we can say it as a parallel. So parent and child can be executing parallelly. So parent is doing and parallelly child is doing. So that is the one way of doing execution between the parent and child. And the second option is like parent wait until the child completes. So next one is parent waits till child completes. So this is the second option. So these two options can be done between the execution of the processes. When we are going to talk regarding how the parent and child are going to be executed, in the sense parent and child can run concurrently, like parallelly parent is doing as well as child is doing. In the second option, what the parent will do is parent will wait till the child complete its process. Why? Because the parent wants some data. So that data is running by the child process. So until the child process completes its data, parent is going to be waiting. So once the child process terminates, then parent process will exit. So this is how the execution between the parent and the child is going to be done. Now the parent is there, here the child is there. So a parent can't exit without the child exit, fine. First child has to exit, then the parent is going to be exited. So that is the reason why we are going to take care of much when the execution between the parent and the child is going to be taking place. And the third what we have dealt with is address space. So what do you mean by the address space? So we are talking regarding the parent and the child. So the address which is going to be having by the parent is going to be shared by the child also. The same address space is shared by the child. Suppose for this process, the parent is having some PID is equals to 6, but child should not have the same process ID. Child should have a different PID is equals to 8, process ID is equals to different. Remaining all the things are going to be similar between the parent and the child except the process ID. Why? Because by making use of that process ID only, we'll be going to identify the process, like we'll be going to extract the details regarding the process. So that process ID should be different for parent as well as a child, but remaining all things can be shared same, similar between the parent and a child. So these are the three things we have to see when we are going to talk regarding this a parent and child. So this is how we'll be going to have a process is going to be created. So process creation in the sense a process, parent process should be there and a child process should be there. So child process can create another child process by making use of EXCC. In Unix you will be going to have a fork system call and EXCC system call. I'll be explaining you now. So by making use of those system calls, a parent can create a child process, and a child by making use of EXCC system call, it can create another new process. So by making use of these two system calls in Unix, you will be going to create a new processes. So this is a brief introduction regarding this process creation, fine. So here process excuse me, process creation need to be created in the system for different operations. So what are the operations may be? The operations may be process creation, system initialization, execution of process creation system call by running a process, and it can be created by making use of a job initialization also. So what we are bothered about is by create a process system call, one process can create another process. As I have said you, one process can create another process. A process may be created by another process using which system call? By making use of fork system call. A process P1 can create another process P2. So this creating process we call it as a parent process, and this created process we call it as a child process. Fine. Parent process and a child process. A child process can have only one parent. So this is the child. This child process should have only one parent. Both parent and child process have the same memory. As I have said you before, same memory will be there. Files will be common. Environment strings will be common. But the different address spaces, that is processes IDs, will be different. So why? Because we'll be going to identify each and every process by making use of a process ID. So the process ID is going to be different for each and every process. So here is the process creation using fork system call. In Unix, like, you will be going to make use of this fork system call and exec system call and exit system call. So these three system calls we are going to use in the creation of a process. So here it is the parent process. So parent process can create a child process, right? So by making use of this fork system call, this parent process have created a child process. Fine. Now this parent process have created a child process. If child process in turn wants to create a new process, by making use of this exec system call, it is going to create a new process and it is going to do the task. Once the task has been completed, then it will be going to get into the exit state. Exit state in the sense the task is completed. So this information is going to be passed to the waiting state. Why? Because here the parent process is waiting for the child process to complete. So until the child process complete, parent process like won't terminate. So when the parent process will terminate is when the child process terminates, then the parent process is going to be terminated successfully. So here once again listen, by making use of a fork system call, this parent process created a child process. By how the child process, a child should have only one parent. This child process, like by making use of this system call, exec system call, this child will replace with a new process. Fine. By making use of this exec system call, this child process is going to be replaced with a new process. So it will be going to replace with new process by making use of a exec system call. Then after completing the task, it will be informed in the exit, it will be invoking the exit system call. Exit system call in the sense the task has been completed, and this will inform to the wait system call. Wait in the sense here this process, parent process is waiting for the child process to complete. So when the child has completed, then the parent process is going to take the charge and it is going to continue with this execution. This is how, by making use of a fork system call and exec system call, exit system call and wait system calls, you will be going to make use of creating a process. This is how we will be going to create a process. And next one is process preemption. Process preemption in the sense, as I have said you, preemption in the sense stopping forcibly. Fine. Preemption in the sense stopping forcibly. Here ready state in the sense all the processes will be over here. Running state in the sense here the CPU is going to execute the task. So by making use of a short term scheduler, one process is selected in the ready queue by making use of short-term scheduler, one process is going to be selected in the ready queue. Suppose X process is selected. By making use of a dispatcher, we'll be going to take that X process into the running state. Now the CPU is executing the X process. So due to some high priority process came in the middle, what we'll be going to do is we'll be going to preempt the process. Preempt the process in the sense, again we are going to keep this X process in the ready state. So finally, initially this X process has been taken out and kept in the running state. Here X process is not there now. So when we are going to do the preemption, then what we are going to do is, again preemption in the sense stopping in the middle. We are forcibly stopping this X process. So we have stopped the X process and we have given execution for Y process. Where this X process need to kept, X process is again we'll be going to keep back in the ready state. So this is how the preemption is going to be done. Preemption makes sure that all process get some CPU time for execution. That is the main motto of preemption. So in preemption we'll be going to give time for all processes in preemption, time for all processes. So in preemption, non-preemption in the sense, only one process is executing much time. So we are not giving time for all the process to execute. So this is the process preemption. And the next one is process blocking. So what do you mean by process blocking? Here we can call this blocking, or we can say it as an waiting also. So here the process is blocked if it is waiting for some event. Suppose, as I have said you, here X is the process which is there in the ready queue. So by making use of a dispatcher, we have taken that X and kept in the running state. Now the CPU is executing this X operation. So what is the process blocking? When this X is going to be blocked in the sense, during the execution, if this X wants some printer, but at that time printer is not available, so what it has to do, it has to wait in the running state. If it is waiting in the running state, that means CPU is going to be idle without doing any work. But we don't want to make our processor to be in idle state. So what we are going to do is, we are going to take this X operation from here and we are going to keep this X over in the blocking state. Blocking state or waiting state is nothing but waiting for an IO operation. So waiting for printer or waiting for any other IO operation. Once the task has been completed, once the printer is allocated for this X operation, it is going to complete its task. After the task is completed, again we are going to take this X process and we will be going to keep in the ready state. When this Y process completed, we will be going to terminate this Y process and we will be going to enter this X process again. This is how process blocking is going to be done. Blocking state or waiting state. When the process is going to be blocked or waiting in the sense, if it needs any IO operation, IO operation in the sense it has to do the task with the printer. But if the printer is not available at that time, what it has to do, it has to wait. If we are going to make that process wait in the running state, the CPU will be idle without doing any work. But we don't want our CPU to be in idle state without doing any work. So that's the reason, instead of keeping that X process in the running state, what we are going to do is, like we'll be going to keep that X process in the blocking state so that CPU can execute another process. So that is the process blocking. And next one is the process termination. Termination in the sense, when a process has been created, it has to be terminated. So after the process has completed the execution of its last instruction, it is terminated. The resources held by a processes are released after it is terminated. Suppose in the previous example, X has allocated are printer resources. If X process is terminated, the resources allocated with this X process are also released. These are free. Now this printer can be allocated to Y process. So that is how a process termination is going to be handled. A child process can be terminated by its parent. As I have said you, this is the parent process and these are the child processes. So a child process can be terminated by the parent process if no longer work is going to be done. If an X task has been given to this child process 1 and Y task has been given to this child process 2. If X task has been completed, this parent process can terminate the child process. Fine. The child process sends its information to the parent process before its termination. So this information is going to be written back to the parent process before its termination. When a parent is terminated, all the child processes are terminated, as well as the parent child process cannot run if the parent process is terminated. So these are the conditions we need to remember when we are going to know regarding the child and the parent process. Parent process is used to create the child process, and when a parent wants to terminate the child process, child has to report all the information to the parent process, then only the child process needs to be terminated. If parent process is terminated, all the child process will be terminated. So this is how process termination is going to be done. This is how these are the operations that we are going to do on a process. So that is how a parent process and a child process can be terminated. These are the two operations that we are going to have on a process. The first main operation is process creation. In Unix, we will be going to create a process by making use of a fork system call, and in order to create a new process by the child, we used to create an exec system call, and in order to exit, we will be going to make use of an exit system call. A process can be in a blocking state, a process can be in a preemptive in the sense we are stopping the process forcibly in the middle, so that is a preemption. A process in a blocking state, a process can be kept in a blocking state when it is in a need of any IO operation. And the last one is process termination. Termination in the sense like killing of a process, that is the process termination. So when a process has been terminated, the space allocated to that process is also going to be freed, so that for another process we can allocate that particular space. So this is how we will be going to have the process creation, blocking, preemption and process termination. And next important main concept is inter-process communication. So inter-process communication. So what do you mean by an inter-process communication? In short, this inter-process communication we call it as an IPC. So IPC, which we call it as an inter-process communication. So what this IPC refers, like it is a mechanism in an operating system provides to allow the process to manage the shared data. So in order to manage the shared data between the processes, we are going for the inter-process communication. As the name itself indicates, the process has to communicate internally. So what are the different mechanisms we are going to apply in order to have the communication between the processes? Before going to that, like a process can be of two types, fine? So here we'll be going to start inter-process communication. Inter-process communication, in short we call it as an IPC, fine. So that is the short form of this inter-process communication. Here a process may be of two types. So a process may be of two types. First one is independent process and the second one is cooperative process. So these are the two different types of process. Independent process, in the sense, independent processes are the process which are not affected by any of the process. These independent process are not affected by any process. But when it comes to the cooperative process, these will affect by another process. These will affect by another process. So that is the difference between the independent process and the cooperating process. So independent process, in the sense, each and everything will be in independent only. Their resources, their input output devices, the memory, everything will be independent, so that it is going to complete its own task. It should not depend on any other thing, or it shouldn't give the information to any other thing. When it comes to the cooperative process, cooperation, in the sense, when we are going to take the process P1 and P2, cooperative, in the sense, these two processes will share the resources, will share the memory, will share the files, will share the input output resources. All the things are going to be shared between these two processes, so that they are cooperative, and one is going to be dependent on the other. So this is the cooperative process. So what are the inter-process communication mechanisms? So how we are going to communicate with the processes? The first thing is shared memory, and the second thing is message passing. The second one is message passing. So these are the two mechanisms in which the IPC is going to be done. So inter-process communication is going to be done. Next, you will be going to have why this inter-process communication is needed. Why IPC? Here the first one is like we'll be going to have the information sharing. Why IPC? In the sense, the first advantage is information sharing, and the second advantage is resource sharing, and the third one is like you will be going to have the modularity, and the fourth one you will be going to have, it is the convenience. So these are the major advantages of why we are going to have the inter-process communication. Here, the first one is the information sharing. So inter-process communication, in the sense, sharing of information between the processes is going to be possible when we are going to deal with the inter-process communication, as well as sharing of resources. Information, in the sense, the files, like you will be going to consideration the files, like the data, the memory, you will be going to share with the different processes. That is the information sharing. When it comes to the resource sharing, you will be going to have the resources like printers, like memory, like the data, what we are going to share the resource, input output devices, hardware devices, those resources are also going to be shared between the processes. Modularity. Modularity, in the sense, like dividing it into small tasks. Suppose if a process P1 is there, this process P1 is a big task. So what we'll be going to do is, we'll be going to divide that process P1 into small tasks. So each task we call it as a module. So each task we call it as a module. So modularity, in the sense, in order to have a short lines of code, or in order to have a short execution time, we'll be going to divide the big task into small tasks. Each task we call it as a modularity. So by making all this, a convenience is going to be achieved. Convenience, in the sense, easy way of doing the things, that convenience is going to be achieved. So why we are going for inter-process communication? In the sense, these are the advantages that are going to be have when we are going to do the inter-process communication. So how we are going to communicate with the processes? So there are two mechanisms I have said you, the shared memory and the message passing. So these are the two important mechanisms in which the inter-process communication is going to be done. So here first we will be going to look after the shared memory. So if you have seen over here, a process can be of two types. So that is the independent process and the cooperative process. Independent process is not affected by the execution of other process, while cooperating process can be affected by the execution of other process. So this is the main thing. So cooperative nature can be utilized for increasing the computational speed. Why? Because if one person is doing all the work, the speed is going to be less, is it not? But when two or three persons going to do the same work, the speed is going to be more. We will be going to expect the output in a very fast way. So that is the thing, computational speed is going to be increasing. And I have said that convenience, so easy way of doing is going to be done. Modularity, in the sense we'll be going to divide the greater task into small tasks so that it is going to be done quickly. Interprocess communication is a mechanism which allows process to communicate with each other and synchronize their actions. So that is the reason why we are going for the interprocess communication. How this communication is going to take place? So by making use of a shared memory and by making use of a message passing, we will be going to communicate between the two processes. Here is an example of shared memory. So, shared memory, in the sense this memory is going to be shared between different processes. For example, in this example, you will be going to have the process A and the process B. How the memory is going to be shared between the processes, in the sense, here suppose process A started execution. So it has used some resources, fine, it has used some files, it has used some variables, all the things it has been used in order to complete its task. So what this process A is going to do is, it will be going to record all this information in the shared memory. It will be going to record all the information in the shared memory, and then it is going to leave it. So when process B wants to execute anything, first what it will be going to do is, first it will be check the record. Record, in the sense, what the process has been used, what are the variables it is using, how much memory it has been occupied, from where to where it has been using. Everything is going to be recorded. So by seeing that record, this process B comes to know that, okay, this amount of memory it is using, these are the variables it is using, so I should not use those variables. Like that, it is going to get an idea, this process is going to get an idea, and it is not going to take that resource or take that files or not to take that data. So that is how the shared memory is going to be utilized. When it comes here, so here process A is there, process B is there, and process kernel is there. So process A is going to do a task, so that task it is going to load into the individual memory. After exiting that, it will be going to update all the thing in the kernel memory, fine, and then it will be going to exit, this will exit. When process B wants to execute, what it will be going to do is, it will be going to check in this kernel memory about the record. So it is coming to know what are the files that have been used, how much amount of memory that has been used, and what are the resources it is in hold with. Like this it is coming to know, and it is not opting for those resources or files. That is how shared memory is going to be done between the processes. So if process A and process B are there, in the sense, process A will record all the things what it has in kept with it in the shared memory. When process B wants to execute, it first check that record. In that record, what are all there, it will be going to leave that, and it will be going to take another one, so that the memory, shared memory concept is not to stuck with any of the process. Suppose if A has not updated in the shared memory, suppose A is holding the printer, fine, if A is holding the printer and B wants to use the printer, in the sense printer is already in held with A process, B has to wait. So if it is not recorded, these things will happen. But when it is recorded, Like what the thing it is going to do is, it is going to check the record first. After checking the record, which resources I have to take, which I have to not to take, is going to get an idea by the process B, and then it is going to execute. This is how the shared memory is going to be executed. See here, what the thing I have explained, here I have written. So process 1 and process 2 are executing simultaneously. They share some resources or some information from another process. Here process 1 generate information about certain computation resources used and keeps in a record. It will be going to store all the things in a record, where in shared memory. When process 2 needs to use the shared information, first what it will check? It will check the record in the shared memory and take note of information generated by the process and act accordingly. So process can use a shared memory for extracting information as a record from the another process. So this is how shared memory concept is going to be working. And the next concept of inter-process communication is the message passing. So what do you mean by a message passing? So passing of messages. Here we are not at all making use of shared memory, is not at all going to be used over here. Only we are completely eliminating the shared memory. We are mainly concentrating on the message passing. So message passing in the sense, first you look at the diagram. So this is the diagram or second method of IPC. Second method of IPC is the message passing. Here sending processes, message passing module. Here sending process will send messages to the receiving process. Like here the sender and the will be there and the receiver will be there. Sending process will send some X data, That data is going to be held by the message passing module. What this module is going to do is, it will be going to create the sender ID, sender process ID, and what the message he want to deliver to, that he will be going to process, and he will be going to send that information to the message passing module at the receiver side. What this receiver will do is, it will be going to take that information and send that information to the receiver process, so that the receiver process will come to know, okay, the message came from X person and some A data has been given. Message, here the source name, sender information, sender ID will be there, and what the message that has been sent by the sender is also will be there. When receiver wants to send, it will be going to send the resource to this message passing module. This message passing module will have the receiver ID and the message. This is going to be sent to the sender module. This sender module will send to the sending process. So this is how message passing is going to take place between the two processes. So here now we'll start our discussion of communication between the process through message passing. In the method, process communicate with each other without using any kind of shared memory. Here shared memory is not at all using. If two processes P1 and P2 wants to communicate, they will be going to follow the following steps. First, if P1, this is the P1 and this is the P2. First step is, it will be going to create a link between the processes P1 and P2. Fine. If the link is not there, it has to create a link. Communication link is the first step between the process P1 and P2. If link already exists, there is no need to create a link between the process P1 and P2. If there is no link exists, then we have to create a link between the process P1 and P2. Next, after creating the link, we have to start exchanging of data. If it exchanging is from P1 to sender to receiver or receiver to sender, we have to exchange the data. In order to exchange the data, we need two primitives. The first one is sender message. What is the message he wants to send? To which destination he needs to send? When he wants to receive, what is the message he wants to receive? From which host or from which person he has to send that message? That information he has to give. So these are the two methods of inter-process communication. So with these two methods, we can communicate with the processes internally, and we'll be going to share the data. So these are the two important concepts in the inter-process communication. So what we have seen today, like we have seen that operations on a process, what are the different operations can be performed on a process, like creation of a is possible and deletion is termination is possible. How we are going to create? We have seen an example of Unix system. By making use of a fork system call, the parent can create a child process. The child can create, if you want to create a new process, exec, execute system call, is going to be done, and exit system call is used to terminate the process, and finally wait system call is used for waiting the parent id. So that is those are the operations that can be done on a process. And next concept what we have seen is inter-process communication. So how we are going to communicate with the processes? Like we can communicate with the processes with the two methods. The first one is the shared memory, and second one is the message passing. In shared memory, what we are going to do is we are going to keep a memory, and in that memory we have a record. If suppose a person has completed its task, what he'll be going to do is he'll be going to keep all the details in that record. If B person process wants to use, in the sense, first it will check that record to how much extent it completed, what are the resources it has been used, and what are the files it has been used. It will be going to check that record, and then it will be going to take the information from that record, and it will be going to execute the task. When it comes to the message passing, so in order to communicate between the processes, we'll be going to communicate by means of message passing. So messages are going to be passed. So in order to send the messages, what the things we have to do is, first we have to create a link between the processes, that is process P1 and P2. We have to create a link. After creating a link, we have to start sending the messages or receiving the messages. So in order to send and receive, we need two primitives. What the message we need to send, to which destination we need to send, that we have to record. So that's all for today. This is how the inter-process communication is going to be done. Thank you all students. Have a nice day.